Now again, this is U.A.S. Legends in Comics panel. To my right is Alitha E. Martinez. Alitha is a 14-year veteran of the mainstream comic industry. She has penciled for both Marvel, DC, and Archie Comics, working on titles such as the New 52 Batgirl and Iron Man. Currently, she is working on a WWE comic book series published by Paper Cuts Comics. She also owns the company Ariat Storm, which produces the comic book Yumi and Ever. Next to her is Mushindo I. Mushindo is a 30-year veteran of the arts. He has worked in many capacities over the years, such as an art director, visual artist, comic book creator, dancer, and martial artist. He has lent his drawing and painting skills to such comics as Jason Wise, Django Unchained, Batman Chronicles, Nightwing, Impulse, and Supergirl. Mushindo is also the co-creator of the Black Ops universe, which heralds such books as Indigo and Anakulaka. Last, but certainly not least, is Mr. Gray Williamson. Gray has worked in the multimedia industry for over 25 years. His contributions include writing, illustrating, sculpting, sequential artistry, costume and set designing for almost every major comic book publisher in the North American comics industry. He is also the president of Carbon Fiber Media, a transmedia company producing such books as Legend of Apollo and Valhalla. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is very intimate, but that makes it all the more better. Okay, so our first question, and we don't have to go in any order, however you're inspired. Yes, please take your mic. However you're inspired. What brought you to the comic book industry? What brought you to the multimedia/comic book medium? Mushindo, since you grab the mic.
Oh, sure. Testing. Testing. What brought me to comics is, I think, what brings most people to comics generally. It's part of the childhood experience. Being an artist, my first love was painting, and it wasn't comics. I really liked the story that a singular image can tell. However, that love of comics and growing to a place where I became much better adept at comics brought me into wanting to do this sequential art. It is a wonderful medium that many things come out of. Films, are basically the story ordered in the beginning, which is again a form of sequential art that directs the pacing and composition of film. So it's the general love of the medium of art as storytelling, which can be done in a singular image or a sequential series of images. That's what my first thrust or love for comics comes in America.
Okay. Alitha?
I was waiting to hear what Ray had to say.
No, you weren't.
Yes, I was.
You're waiting.
I don't remember the question.
What brought you to the comics industry, please?
Going on upstairs right now is the Urban Official Celebrity Panel. Upstairs in it, so if you follow me. Again, the Urban Official Celebrity Panels is going on right now.
No, it's not.
Upstairs.
The lies and innuendo.
Well, let them come anyway. They'll be surprised. Have a wonderful surprise. Go ahead, Alitha.
I just wanted to tell a story. That's what I wanted to do. So I entered comic books to tell a story. I want to tell my own story, because right now I'm telling a story to you.
Right.
I told my story.
What brought you to the multimedia industry?
Before I was a comic artist, I was a child care. I worked for 10 years in child care. I've done everything from group homes to working in a maximum security office. From little children to youth that have been tried as adults and the like. So I came from that, which was kind of depressing. I'm a child of the 60s, and when I was growing up in a bad neighborhood, we were surrounded by heroes. Our heroes weren't in TV, they weren't in books, in books as much as they lived around us. They were like practically superheroes living amongst us in a trying time. So when I ended up getting into child care and ultimately seeing that what was being done in child care wasn't working, and thinking that there was no place for me in the way that child care worked, especially working in the prisons. You know, I saw a lot of people I grew up with locked up, and I really couldn't do anything for them. I realized that maybe I could get out of that, and I could draw a little bit. So if I could get out of that and I could get into an industry like comics, and I could tell stories that were like reminiscent of the heroes that I grew up with in a dramatic fashion, and maybe that these kids who I used to see, they were, all of them were almost always hooked on comics and comic type properties, that maybe they would see them and see possibilities for themselves and get something out of that, And I could affect things more with work in a book or in multimedia than I could in a counseling session, in a lockup, in a prison.
Now, in an industry where there's a rotating door of talent, how do you maintain your longevity?
I think that's a good question. I think out of self-exploration comes longevity. Because if you experience your environment openly without allowing the environment to totally dictate your direction, you have a place where you come from your inner self to express something. Like the sister said, she had stories to tell. Those are her stories through her particular vision. That's unique. There's no lifespan on that. But when we do trope, when we look at a comic character or a series of comic characters and take an amalgamation created out of that, to me that instantly becomes dated. So anytime I speak about my craft, it's always about the experience with the self that I'm going to come from. Because it is the kind of vocation where you sit and you spend an incredible amount of time with you. That gives clarity, but it also brings you closer to the relationship with the Creator. I think ingenuity comes out of that. That's how.
Alitha?
These are very deep answers. I'm sorry. They're very, very deep answers, very thoughtful. But for me, longevity comes in age. I have two sides. I do as I'm told, as quickly as I can, to the best of my ability, which is about 5% of what I'm capable of. And I do that month after month after month, with the thought that I have to feed my child and take care of my family that live in Honduras, which is not like being here in America, being surrounded by all this affluence and first world problems, getting surrounded by narcotraficantes, being harassed them going into the church door. We are just outside Lawless, Mexico, where they're finding people after the Superman's come down. This is where my mother lives in a gated community with barbed wire around the top of her fence to make sure she doesn't get killed in the night, like her friend who once lived in Florida with her. She went home. This is where my people are from. So I don't have these experiences of the streets of New York and stuff. I came into the country as a 12-year-old. They didn't have comic books there. We had Fred Flintstone and Dallas, and that was it. That was the extent of TV. And Pinocchio as well, but he was always getting hurt and destroyed. It's not like New York stuff, it's like being in America. So for me, as I said, there's two sides. I want to tell a story, but I have to tell their story. I'm part of that machine that keeps pushing this stuff out. They never ask me what I want to draw. They always say, I like it, I love it, now change it. Whatever they see in my work that they like, it's the stuff that I do on my own from the other side of myself. My creator-owned properties, which I have very little time for, out of my whole work week, out of a whole year, I might get 8 days to draw for myself, so I have to draw as quickly as I can. That's why there's so few books. I type, I work about 20 hours a day, because I have my child to take care of as well. So I come from a different spot. I have to keep cranking it out. My longevity comes from being able to adapt, and the fact that editors know that they can get the work from me. Unfortunately, it does create a burnout. I no longer feel it, and that's the honest truth. I don't feel anything. So I'm amazed that you feel something. And how could you have been doing this for 30 years? I don't understand. You're bathing the blood of virgins or what?
Well, you know, it's interesting. It's interesting that you say that, because longevity does not include burnout. It's not a model for longevity. That is it's servitude on so many levels. And the reason that I'm like this is because I started out so early working for myself.
See, I started working for Joe Quesada.
Right, which is not a problem. There can be very vast, enlivened careers that come from that. But most people who have that in those closed circles are the really either fortunate, super talented, or super talented. But for everybody else, if you don't watch it, you will burn out. Because what I didn't want to get caught, I didn't want to get caught trying to serve too many masters. So I knew that my personality is so fiery that it's best that I do things my way, so that I wouldn't have to conflict with others that I knew that I could come across, because I am my own person. And out of that was born out of a particular vision that was unique. And in that, there's the longevity. I've done work that's 20 years old that doesn't look 20 years old. I mean, in its concept, in even its technique, it's just great. Because I always say spiritual, because that's just where I come from with that. And I see a lot of force in knowing thyself. It's an old principle. It is so very functional.
Ray, what do you have to add to the conversation about longevity? I saw that side eye, but that's okay.
Right. Alitha talked about doing what she's told. And I think that more is about, she's speaking about it. What it's about is there's a job to be done, and she disciplines herself to do the job. Am I correct?
Yes, exactly.
And she doesn't allow herself to get too caught up in the other things that stop her from getting the job done, like any other job. So she disciplines herself because she's got people to take care of. This is her line of work. This is what she does. She executes. Correct?
Exactly.
I've seen you work. I've seen Alitha work.
Now, what about yourself? What about yourself, for yourself? Oh, okay.
I've seen her work, and as I joked with her earlier, it is technically profound, which is something that many of us in this industry, are missing, either because we haven't had access to the training, or we haven't had the discipline to devote ourselves to study and learn the technical aspects of the job. So when I see someone like Alitha who does what she does technically profound, I really respect and appreciate that. And when she talked about longevity, like inspiration in the course of doing a job will fail you during the course of your life. But if you learn how to simply execute and get the job done, you make a system for yourself, and you apply yourself to the system and discipline yourself to do it, you can still get your work done. And that's the kind of longevity you were talking about.
Yes, that was. Very much so.
Yes.
It's totally different from the side that's creative that allows me to do other stuff on my own. That's a whole lot.
I get you. I see it.
Thank you. I wanted to get beat up.
And then Mushindo talked about the artist, in a manner of speaking, he spoke about the artistry of the work. And about it's a spiritual thing for him, and because it's part of who he is, don't think the longevity is an issue for him because he's simply breathing art. Breathing art. Is that pretty accurate? Because he is art. If you know Mushindo for many years, it just comes out as pores. So he's longevity because it's natural to him. And I would say that, and I envy him for that. My situation, as far as longevity is concerned, has to do with stubbornness. It has to do with being difficult. And I come up in a time when everything around you was stacked against you, and the only way that you kept doing it was by being more stubborn than your environment. So I was raised in a stubborn atmosphere. So I've done, we talked about like do what you're told, and I understood what that was about. Like when I got into this industry, I was kind of known as the artist who could draw anybody's character and do it well. To the point where several artists at Marvel and DC constantly ripped me off for my stuff. I got hired at one point by DC to do their style guide for Batman, so that they could get their artists to draw their character and look like I did it. So I never liked Batman. Batman's ridiculous. But I did it, and I did it the way they wanted to do it, because that was my job. I see it. But periodically in our business, some of us get targeted. Like you think you're going to walk through business, and everything is going to be cool, and you may be sitting next to a guy who walks through, he gets a job, he walks through the business, he gets his job, he meets his deadline, he gets another job, he gets his deadline, he gets another job. You may be sitting next to that guy, but the guy next to him might be doing the same thing, but for some reason he just rubbed somebody the wrong way. And then he gets attacked. Now, surely that's just the way it works in business, but art is a place, the art business is a place where you can get away with that. She talked about, she started working with Joe Quesada. I had already been blacklisted and broken my blacklist when I started working alongside Joe Quesada. And that whole blacklisting thing is why I'm still here. Because it's my nature, and it's the nature of, I think, many of us. Like at some point, somebody told me, you couldn't do it. But we're not going to let you do it.
So you use an obstacle to push you to the forefront and maintain your longevity?
I use history. We come from a people who are told that you can't do a thing, or you're not supposed to do a thing, or you're not supposed to be a thing. So when they told me I couldn't do it, like if it was something that I had endeavored to do, I did it out of a sense of responsibility. There were times when I hated drawing. I hated picking up a pencil. I hated having to execute designs for toys and draw books, draw comics for Marvel or for DC. I hated it because there was so much nastiness that went along with it. I just wanted to do cool stuff, draw interesting stuff. I was a kid who grew up reading science fiction, even though I was in the hood. I lived in the hood, I lived in the country, I lived in the mountains, and at some point I've done all of that. And I just wanted to do cool stuff, and then you get into this business, and it turns into a nasty thing, so I started hating it. But I knew my father, and my father was a guy who refused to let somebody tell him who and what he was going to be, and that's where he come from, and he got it from his mother, my grandmother. Ooh, she was rough. And then I told you about these people that grew up in my neighborhood. You weren't allowed to do certain things. In 64, in 65, if you were standing out on the corner talking to somebody, you get rousted by police. You weren't allowed to do that. So, I mean, and you talk about not growing up in the hood, I remember getting pulled over by state troopers at 12, 13 years old in the countryside simply because I was walking along the road because my tire busted in my bike. I had a friend hold my bike, and I walked a few miles home, and I got pulled over by state troopers because I wasn't allowed to walk on the road. So when you tell me I can't do something, and this is where we come from, I'm like, you know what? Watch. And I'm doing it not for me, but for every me that there is, if somebody tells me they can't do something, there's droves of individuals just like me, or they may not be able to write like I do, or draw like I do. Like, I hated this stuff. I couldn't put it down because I can do this stuff, and if I don't do it, if I let them push me out, and I don't provide an example to them, then I'm basically a punk.
Well, let me say this. This leads me to my next question, actually. What would you consider to be the most pivotal point in your career? And I'll start with you, Gray. Because you gave us a lot of information. It sounded like a lot of pivotal points. Would you consider any of those, or is there something extended beyond that that you consider to be pivotal?
I would say the most pivotal point in my art career, because I've had two of them, I had 2 years, was when a few brothers in the business assisted the companies in blacklisting. Like, once again, I was just a guy that wanted to be good. Like, if I do anything, I want to be good. So when I got into this business, I was already 26, 27 years old, when a lot of guys are like, they've been in the business since they were in high school and stuff. I just started thinking about the business, and I never had been around comics. I mean, grew up reading comics, but I never been around the art. Never went to art school, never did any of that stuff, and I didn't really know how to approach the stuff. So I saw it, and I'm like, I saw what they did, and I'm like, well, maybe I could be good at that. So I studied. I went to the library and studied all that stuff, and I'm like, well, if I study hard enough and I practice hard enough, I can be good. So I started getting decent, and when I started getting decent, I thought that I got my first job, and I thought I could just build a career like that, like I had built a career doing anything else that I had applied myself to since I was a little kid. I've been working since I was 9 years old. So I thought that I could just do that, and then reality set in. And I found out that, we ain't all the same. And the enemy, and our enemy is more often than not an alliance between what we think is our enemy and ourselves. So the most pivotal point in the business for me was when I thought that there were people that I was cool with, and then they started calling my enemies to tell them not to hire me, or to try to get me off of my books. So, and if your own people will do that to you, then the others, you're easy game for them. Because, they figure you're standing alone. Nobody's going to stand with you, so they might as well get you out of the way and then get somebody else who they can control, where they feel they can control a little better, whether I had exhibited any revolutionary aspects or not. When they meet you, they get the impression of whether they think that you may become trouble later on. Some of what we do in comics is about being personable and respectful and poignant. And when I would do this, and I was respectful, some editors would think I was making fun of them. Why are you speaking to me so respectfully? Like, you making fun of me? Like, I would show up 15 minutes early for all my appointments. Actually, I'd be outside waiting, and then I would show up 15 minutes early, met my deadlines all the time, and when I did that, no matter what I did, they would then pass word around that I was late. They would, if I got my scripts done ahead of time, if I got my pages done, editors would do things like, we have script changes in the last few pages. I'd be okay, fine, and I'll wait until you give me the script changes, and then I'll do those pages. And they would wait for like weeks during the deadline, and at the last minute they'd say, well, we need you to draw, now we're giving you the script for the last 10 pages. We need you to get it done. And if you don't get it done, you blow your deadline. So they play games with you like that, but I would still get my work done. Stay up all night, all day, all night, all day. Alitha talks about working 20 hours a day. I did that 7 days a week, like for years. Sometimes all-nighters. I did it myself, helping other people do it, and you know what? Mushindo talks about getting burnt out. I got tired. But the most pivotal point was even being tired, like I kept at it because I was like, you know what? There's cats like me that trying to do it. There's my people out there. We're not represented in the books. We're not really represented that well on the job or on the jobs. They were like, we get disrespected. Both the men and the women of us, even the women of us even worse, get disrespected. And I'm like, you know what? We have to build our place in the business. So I just kept at it. And then when they stabbed me like that, like in obvious fashion, yeah, it was pivotal. And it didn't just happen to me. It wasn't just to me. It ain't all about me. I saw them do it to myself. I saw them do it to a couple of friends of mine. In the process of them blacklisting me, they drove another friend of mine into suicide.
That's wow.
So this is the business that I know. That's what I see. So yeah, that was pivotal for me. I had to ultimately get past that and realize that what I saw as an industry, and what I saw as a business and industry was only that there was a medium that was profound and was powerful. And I refused to let them and what they did drive me out of such a powerful mechanism for communication. And if I could continue to do what I did and get around dealing with those that had it in for me, if I could still continue and get past that, then others could see that they could do it themselves. I could maybe find new methods of doing it that they could eat off of. I could blaze some ground that way. We'll see what happens.
Okay, I appreciate your honesty. Mushindo?
I'd like to go to two pivotal points. One is, I would say, is a favorite pivotal point. But I think the first one, career-wise, when I did my first 4 feet by 6 foot painting. And it was a challenge to an older business partner that I had who had already had his life experience, and he came off as an elder guide. And he saw the magnitude of the work. He was in the sign craft and I was into the visual medium, so it was a good artistic marriage where he would do the lettering to the sign craft and I would come behind and do the art. And that particular challenge, I grew exponentially in that one moment. Because the first painting I did, anybody who's seen my portfolio may have seen a Maasai warrior in it. That's the painting. And I did it overnight. And I didn't do a grid to interpret the photograph. I just stood back and looked at it, made my placement. And I mean, I didn't have any children at the time. And I just worked on it overnight. And then in the morning, when he came in the studio, he was shocked. Completely finished photorealistic piece. That was really pivotal because it for me showed me as a young man how efficient I could be. And then that grew my income because anybody that walked into that studio, that was the thing that made an impact on them as to who I was artistically. And people treated me as if I was a gem in the community, because I'm a community artist. See, my focal point wasn't Marvel and DC. I'm not saying those are bad things. I'm saying, but my focus was the magnitude of the community. We're a very wealthy community. We are. We spend millions of dollars with other people. So there's also a need in that community. So the business model is, if I fulfill that need, so too will I become a millionaire for my people, because they're doing that for others. And the other pivotal moment was just working with Brother Wesley Snipes on a property that I actually helped to create. So that was extremely pivotal and showed me a lot about the good and the downside of Hollywood. It's not a place that I think is very friendly towards us. Not many things are, but they've got a thing where what I'm trying to show people with how I do my images is what imagery does for the human brain. That's why hieroglyphs is considered divine writing. It is a visual reminder that stimulates the brain in a certain way, and it could be malevolent or benevolent. So I'm trying to grasp my power to influence positive change in the community. But those are my two pivotal moments.
Alitha?
That's okay. I was thinking about this for a little bit here. I really put a little bit of thought to this. And I said, it was the moment I accepted that I was going to remain invisible. Because there's a difference between being what I am and being packaged in this body and doing this for a living, that I have to constantly be faced with. It never goes away. It's never going to get any better. I'm always going to face something because of it. Even at this show here, it's a small show. They walk up, I mean, they were ready to accept that my son, who's a little boy, drew this stuff they see behind me.
Excuse me?
Yeah, they walked up and said, did you do this to my son? Over myself. And that's something that I realized you're going to face. And because of that, it has a lot. There's just, you're paying for that. It starts with the fact of the packaging. It starts with the fact of the work you're doing. It starts with the fact because of you're doing the packaging and the work, they can pay you less. They can just not just pay you less, they can pay you under certain things. They said that, you know, under the tax laws, I'm providing towels for a hotel. That means they can pay me net 90. Net 90 means they don't cut your check for 3 months. Yes, that's what I face. That's lovely. So that's why I try to remain a freelancer as much as I can, because working under contract in this economy, and this means net 90. Net 90 means 90 days before they can cut your check. Believe me, landlords don't want to hear that. They get upset. So there was that moment about 2 years ago when I was working under contract for Lerner, and I realized that, you know, Alitha, you absolutely have no value. You have no value. You're not valued as a human. You're not valued as a worker. You're not valued as just like an entity that exists, that needs to eat, that needs to, you know, that has a right. So why are you doing this? Maybe you should be doing something else with your life. Then I realized, you know, this is what I am. This is all that I am. This is what I was when I was little. This is what I disciplined myself to do my whole life. And this is what I hope to do until the day I die. It doesn't matter. I will never win an award. I'm pretty certain I'll be readily forgotten.
No,
but
if I have anything to do with
okay.
it, no, you won't
But
be.
I'm saying it, to me that's okay, because I came here, I showed my face, which I rarely do. I don't come out much in public. I've been doing this for 14 years and I still get that, when did you start? Is this your first book? No, this is not the first. Have you drawn for big companies? Yes, I have. Have you drawn flagship books? Yes, I have. But none of that matters. Every book is the first. Every time is the first. Every time I come outside, it is the first, very first time. And you're absolutely and perfectly invisible. And I had to become comfortable with that in order to continue.
It is very deep. So with that said, what are your future aspirations in the industry for yourselves? Mushindo?
To reclaim the minds of a people who have lost their minds.
How valid.
I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And in order to do that, in order to get the old people on board, we have to influence the young people. It is why Disney targets the children. The children influence what the parents do, even the direction of the dollar. And I think that as broad as Disney is, I consider as a parent some of what I see come across the screen as influence, I consider a bit malevolent. You know, it teaches more about friendships than it does familial connection and familial purpose, unless you're a king or a queen who gets to win the kingdom. Then familiar becomes really important, but it's still connected to fiat or the gaining of the inheritance. And that's very selfish, because we all may have circumstances where we witness people fight over the remains of a fallen family member to get what's left of their life for themselves, self-aggrandizing. So if I had to do anything in this life, it is to try to resurrect the latent part of the brain of my people so that the greatness that we are known for, we can not only reclaim that, but we can teach them to grow generational wealth. That's it.
Great.
Could you ask the question again, please?
Absolutely. What are your future aspirations in the industry or in general?
I don't know.
That's an acceptable answer. It's fine.
I mean, I have a job to do. As an artist, I'm a conduit. So I tell stories. For me, art is nothing but communication. I just tell stories. The stories that I tell don't come from me. I receive them completely whole, and when I get them, I have to figure out what is the significance of the story. Why is the story given to me? I need to understand what the story is trying to tell me so I can then deliver it like it's been delivered to me. So if I have an ability to tell us to write and to draw, then, and I'm given these stories, then I figure that maybe that's, for lack of a better word, my calling. So the calling is not necessarily something that I enjoy doing or that I aspire to do. It's simply who I am and what I do. And that's the role that's my path. So I have to just do that. Like, I don't aspire to be bigger than that. I don't aspire to become famous. I don't aspire to gain any more respect than I give it. I don't have aspirations. I just have a job. So, what are my aspirations? I'll work on it.
Okay. It's fine. Alitha?
I hope to fulfill my retirement plan of dying at my desk like King Kirby. That would be lovely. But before that, I hope that, that's how I gotta go. It's only fair. Yes, do not go gentle and Jack, good night.
At 2 p.m., we have digital distribution upstairs in Exhibit Hall B, or is from. If anyone is going to attend the movie of Last Dragon.
I can't remember what I was saying. Shoot.
You said you wanted to die.
That's right, I wanted to die at my desk like King Kirby. That's exactly right. And before that, I hope that someone reads a story that I wrote myself and said, hey, you know, I kind of enjoyed that story. Just a little bit. That I wrote, not one that I did for someone else. Like Foreign, which I buried myself.
Yes, sir.
I told you I had many careers.
Yes, sir.
I did the child care thing. And then when I got blacklisted, the reason that I knew a few of these people in here is because I did the kickboxing. And like it seemed like every single thing that we do, like the environment that we are in wants to see us in a certain way because it feeds them somehow. Or at least they think it feeds them better than the reality of it. So I think, you know, Mushindo spoke about it. He spoke about community and about being in service to community, which I can tell you I'm familiar with his work. And brother just pulled up one of his pieces in the audience and was like, he looks at it, he bought the piece and he's astounded and it's inspiring for him. And Alitha talked about like, you know, like taking care of her family and just, you know, wanting to just maintain that because she has a job to do. And I guess what I'm getting to is that like none of what we do happens by itself, or do we do it by ourselves. If you want to do this business, be in this business and do this stuff, you need help. Nobody becomes good by themselves. In the same way that you have responsibilities and they push you forward, like there's no way, like every single King Kirby, every single icon in the business had other people that they were around who they fed off of. I remember having a conversation with King Kirby, and he talked about his approach to drawing specific characters, and Captain America specifically. And it was like an eye-opening thing that this guy who we thought was like the father of modern day comics was sitting there talking about. He was looking at a couple of my drawings and telling me about, he was talking about the sensitivity that he was trying to put in Captain America's face and where he got it from, and he mentioned other artists that he knew at the time. Built the modern day comic book business from the early, rebuilt it from the early 60s. They passed around work. They did it all the time. They had work given to them. If they couldn't do it, they passed it to the next guy. That guy couldn't meet his deadlines. He stepped in and helped them. They had guys, and then the second rung of it, like the guys like Mike, before Mike Kaluta, Walt Simonson and Starstruck dude. What's his name?
Wow.
Mike Kaluta. Mike Kaluta, Bernie Wrightson. There's a lot of guys like that were the second tier of what we now think of as comic book legends, but they all knew each other and they all like worked around each other. I was sitting there with Kaluta and Wrightson, and they were talking about how they were working, getting drunk, drinking beers with Howard Chaykin, how they all threw the work back and forth with each other. And I'm like, there was no community there for me. There was no a place where I could go to where work was flowing in and out of, and we could share work with each other. So as the result, Alitha is forced to take the position that she's taken like this and doing it extremely well to take care of her family and do that. Like, I'm like, this is a shame. As good as she is, and at one point, I had a studio in Midtown and I reached out to Alitha. And even the guys that I was working with did not want to do this. So I know what she's saying is real. She is wrapped in a package that is not popular in comics, not even among people who should be embracing it. I remember having a fight in my studio over the nonsense. In my own studio. So, yeah, this stuff is real. It's a shame. But you know, here we are in a situation now where we are no longer, and this is for myself, Mushindo, for Alitha, for anybody like this, we are no longer, we have gone through all the nonsense of it, we are no longer in the same position. There's only a few guys out here. But now, comic books themselves are practically dead, as we know it, the print comic book. Everything is moving toward web and web production, and broadcast, web leading to broadcast, but mostly web. Instant transmission, and that is not regulated. So if you can maintain yourself by doing what you've been doing, like Alitha's been doing, like Mushindo's been doing, and like I've been struggling to do, but I don't have what they have. So if you can maintain yourself, and you can just hold on for a minute and continue to produce your own stuff and get it out into the public through the web, you can be at the foundation of what is a whole new artistic movement in our industry, just like it happened in 1962 and 63 when I first started reading comics.
Well, with that said, I'm going to close out the panel and I'm going to take a couple of questions, but I will definitely say this. Thank you very much for sharing your truth. Thank you for being honest with us, sharing your genius. We really appreciate it. But I will add to what you said, Gray, in terms of community. Panels like these are built in communities. We have a small group here today, but they're a pivotal group, they're an important group, because they will go out and speak to the masses, their friends and their families, about the information that you brought to them. And we will do future panels. I had the Women in Comics Collective, and we do panels with that as well, in order to bridge the gap with communities. So it's gonna happen, whether slowly, gradually, or however the momentum is, it's going to happen, and we're gonna make it happen because that power is ours. So again, I thank you. And would anyone like to ask any questions?
You spoke about genius. I want to acknowledge a particular genius in the audience that just stepped through, Brother Derek Garvin. He is the creator of Dynasty of the Magi, an incredibly adept and the depth-filled comic property. Stand up, Derek, please. You know, yeah. This is one of our community geniuses who take the legacy of Africa and refit it so that it can be digested by the masses today. And I'm glad to work with this brother. And I think what we're doing is, and Gray is actually a part of the project as well. And I'm glad that we're actually able to take what we are saying here and make it real. And he's a part of that reality. Thanks, Derek, for coming through, man.
And I want to give a really big thank you to Robert Garrett of Exmoor Studios who produced this panel.
Thank you, Robert. You know how we do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Roosevelt Pitt was like one of the foundations of us in this business. One of our points.
Right. True. He's
Please
been around.
introduce him.
Roosevelt. Matter of fact, come, please, because you are very pivotal in this. Just come and take the mic.
And just a little bit about, you know, what you've done in comics. Just
Really quickly, because we have a question.
Well, as they said, I've been doing this comic book thing as a writer, publisher since '93. And some of you may remember Ania. We actually debuted with Milestone. My character was Purge. And I would like to say real quickly, you know, I understand how you feel about that package, but from someone who relies on your ability to take what's in here and make it visible on the comic book page is astounding. So I can speak from my particular position and perspective as a writer who has depended on Gray on numerous occasions, especially this brother Mushindo, who I've known for 25 years, to take what could be considered paltry and make it extraordinary. It would always resonate with me, forever, and it resonates with my 5 children, who consider him a father figure because of the imagery that he portrays and the emotion that he puts into his work that continues to inspire them to this day.
Thank you.
So I want to say that.
Thank you very much. Sir? Thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. Okay, you can speak loudly.
Okay, good afternoon. Greetings. I want to know, I just came from Jacob Javits Center. They had an event called The Gadget, where they were displaying Oculus Rift, virtual reality, the new 3D reality, and things of that nature. As an artist myself, I want to know what steps would one take if I want to begin to immerse my artwork into both video games and also into the 3D realm, where we begin to, in the virtual world, create these worlds that some of our brothers and sisters have been drawing for over the years, so we could actually jump into this new wave of digital artwork and things of that nature. And the second question would be, because I know the software and things of that nature are improving daily, how far away is it to say that we're, you know, if we wanted to create video games with, you know, a smaller budget than what it used to cost, say 5 to 10 years ago, where we could begin to take these characters who already have been created, instead of trying to recreate the wheel. I feel that the work has already been put out for the last 2 decades by some of our premier artists, so we can begin to, you know, convert those into video games and things of that nature, more in the 3D realm, so our children could get into that, and then we could go into film.
No, I want to say something about this first, because I hear a lot of young creators and people who want to be creative. They put their creativity ahead of practicality. The first thing you do is copyright your work. You copyright it to yourself. Everyone else is work for hire. I don't care who it is. It could be your brother, your sister, your best friend. They're all work for hire. You own it yourself, and then you won't get into litigation later on if your property hits. You could have the next Superman, you could have the next Assassin's Creed in you, but it means nothing if you don't own it. And believe you me, Microsoft or any one of those bigger companies will have to snatch it out of your hands immediately. So the first thing you do is a simple $35 copyright under your own name, George your little self, whatever it is, whatever your ability is, and it's yours. Start with that. Secondly, watch the message boards. Last year they gave away Maya for free. Maya is a creation program for animation. Animation, that's where you start. You have to listen and go to the trade shows, listen to what's out there. But definitely start with having that foundation of ownership yourself. Not enough, oh, they put this creative idea ahead of practicality about this is a real world, this is a business. You know, as much as you love it, as much as you want to love it, as much as you want your work to last for generations, it will not last under your name. And one proof, who drew Mickey Mouse first? Do you know? There you go.
Anyone else like Tim?
You talked about programs. Surely, as you speak this in this way, and you just came back from Javits, surely you're in the game and you're doing your research and you're learning programs. What I'll tell you is that the problem that you're facing is the same problem that we face in comics. People that do comics don't realize that comic books as a medium is a mechanism that has a structure that works in a specific manner. There is a science to the comic book. There's a science to placing images on the page. There's a science to how the page works, how the cover works, how the turning, how your eye moves to turn the page, there's placement of things on the cover so that you can pick up the book first. And once they get you turning the pages, you have already been programmed to continue until you get to the end of the book. It's the science of the book. People don't understand it. There is a science to it, and those that started that comic book industry got taught this. These people that we now know as the masters of comics understand this. They studied the science of it. One of the sciences of it was basically understanding what a story is, or what makes a story worth telling. So in the course of your studying your programs, in the course of learning things like Maya and ZBrush and things like that, and incredible tools. I sculpt by hand, and I also do some work in ZBrush. So, and I love sculpting. In those programs, there's a program. I was in a science expo a few years ago because I create things as well in that aspect. And I was in a technology expo, and we discussed using a program. The name is just escaping me, but it's what they use to design cars. And what it is, it's a 3D program where you draw lines on a page like it's 2D, and then you grab the lines and you pull them down. I actually had to play with the program, and you can pull them down and create planes and create objects just by dragging your lines down the planes. Yes. They were supposed to come out with that last year and make it available. And then it was too expensive, and they wanted to make it available monthly membership like Photoshop. But the time will come soon when those programs will be so incredible and the competition is so great that they'll be cheap enough. Well, you will be able to do that. But what gets lost is the basic understanding of story, the basic understanding of the mechanism of what makes something compelling. So while you study other stuff, don't let that go, because what you'll find yourself is surrounded by a lot of people who know how to work a program, but not a lot of people who know how to make the program work for them.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.